Hey everybody, it's story time. This is the first of what I hope will be a great many stories in this series. And this first one is going to be about beer and tacos and ancient wisdom. A very, very long time ago, I was attending college at Francis Marion University. Back in those days, I don't know what it's like now, but back in those days, Francis Marion was a commuter college, so kids would go to school during the week, and then during the weekend, about 90% of the campus would empty out, and all the kids would go back to be with mom and dad. When that left just a handful of us diehards that stayed on campus for the weekend by ourselves, and our ritual, mine and my roommates at the time, was on Friday afternoon, after classes let out, we'd go to the gas station across the street from the college and buy enough beer to create a wall of beer in our fridge. We took pictures once or twice to commemorate said wall of beer, but those pictures are lost to the long ago now. But it was a fairly impressive looking gigantic wall of nothing but beer, including, on the shelves and on the door, everything. Just we didn't have anything else in the fridge except beer. And that was our entertainment for the weekend. Well, under normal circumstances, we'd also stock up on snacks because, I mean, you have that much beer for the whole weekend, you're going to get the munchies. You got to have something to go with it. Uh, One particular weekend, however, we made a catastrophic miscalculation. While we didn't forget the beer, we did fail to properly account for our collective appetites, and we didn't get nearly enough snack food for when we inevitably got the munchies later that evening. Well, that was a problem because back in those days, Florence, South Carolina, which is where the college is located, basically shut down at dark. So if you didn't get what you needed before the sun went down, you just weren't going to get it. There was, however, one exception to that rule, and that exception was Taco Bell, which stayed open until midnight. We didn't realize that we had a serious junk food shortage until around 10:30, 11 o'clock that evening. So all the grocery stores was already closed, and Taco Bell was the only option open to us. The problem with that was I had the only car big enough to hold all of us, and of course, we all had to go. That was just a given, and I was far too intoxicated to drive. That in turn was a problem because, as a rule, nobody drove my car but me. The vehicle in question was a 1970 Mercury Comet. You should probably do a Google image search. This is kind of a fugly car. Mine was all white and had this fantastic light blue space age material in the seats, which that, that was just really code for if somebody puked in my car, it was pretty easy to clean up. That was the main advantage of that. Well, like I said, I was in no shape to drive, and that brings us to one of my roommates at the time, a fellow named John Farinelli. John, if you happen to see this, I hope you're doing okay. I'm not exactly sure how, but John got the nickname Vinny. And John was built, you remember little toys, Weebles? They wobble, but they don't fall. Yeah, John was built like a Weeble. And let me tell you, he could hold his alcohol better than anybody I've ever seen. He could drink me under the table, and back in the day, I could drink a lot. Well, all that to say, while I was absolutely shit faced, John was in reasonably good shape to drive. I will not say that he wasn't fairly intoxicated himself, but he was better off than I was. So he said very self confidently, Chris, don't worry about it. I can do it. I can drive. But circumstances being what they were, that were good enough for me. So we all piled into my car and breaking a couple of local speeding ordinances along the way, Vinny got us to Taco Bell in record time. We pull into the parking lot and then around to that little speaker with the menu board, and then this young girl's voice floats to us from the speaker, and it said, "Welcome to Taco Bell. May I take your order, please?" So John turns around in his seat to ask all of us what we want. Of course, immediately everybody start talking over each other, simultaneously trying to give him our orders. His eyes kind of get real big for a minute, and he stared at us like we've all completely lost our shit, and like all the noise is just too much for his drunk brain to process. And well, after about 10 or 15 seconds, he waves his hands and kind of waves us, shushes us into silence, and says, guys, I got it. I got it. So, without another word, he turned back to the speaker. He's a short guy, so he leans out the window to get closer to the speaker. I mean, he leans way out the window, so far that I'm half thinking that he's gonna fall into the parking lot. I'm about to grab his legs to keep that from happening. But instead of falling out, he says very matter of factly, "Yes, ma'am. I'd like a shitload of tacos, please." And there was this moment of silence, this pregnant pause, and in my mind's eye, well, I'm picturing the Taco Bell girl looking at her cash register, trying frantically to find the shitload of tacos button somewhere on it. And of course, there's no such button. So I, I am super curious now as to how she is going to respond to this request. And she did not disappoint. I gotta say, I was impressed because after a moment, the voice floated back and said, "That'll be 1483. Please pull forward." And it was at that moment, right then, that I realized we were on the threshold of an important discovery. So we pulled around, and John gave her the money, and in a couple of minutes she gave John the biggest Taco Bell bag I had ever seen in my life. And it was filled to the top with tacos. Now, everybody in the car was already hungry. We'd been drinking for a good while and had built up a pretty good case of the munchies, so everybody wanted just to dig right in and start eating the tacos on the way home. But I was riding shotgun in my car that night, and I commandeered the bag, and I wouldn't let anybody near it because I had to know, right? I had to know how many tacos exactly constituted a shitload. And I am going to share that answer with you now. We got home when I counted them before anyone could have any. And should anyone ever ask you how many tacos constitute a shitload, you can say with authority that the answer is 28. This wisdom comes direct from the Oracle of Taco Bell. So now you know. You're welcome. If you thought this was a fun little story and want to hear more like this, please consider hitting the like and subscribe button as it will help me tremendously and enable me to continue making more content like this. Thank you.